Welcome. You are listening to The Travel Winds, hosted by Pete Kotzbach. This is a weekly interview show about people who travel for work and all the ups and downs that go along with it. Here we go.
Hey, welcome to the Travel Winds podcast. Today, my guest is a businessman, Kenny Tomlin. How are you today, Kenny?
Good. It's good to talk to you.
I appreciate the time. Yeah, you're the founder of CourtAvenue. I'm not even going to try and explain what you do because it's pretty well involved. But you're an entrepreneur in spirit. You founded many companies, sold some of them, and now you're doing CourtAvenue. What exactly does CourtAvenue do, and how does it make money? What do you provide?
Awesome. CourtAvenue is a digital transformation business. So I think the quote that Mark Andreessen popularized in 2011 is that quote, "Software's eating the world." And our job is to make sure our clients have a seat at the table and a big plate for the feast. So we work at the intersection of emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, connected devices, et cetera. And we support our clients in using those technologies to improve their businesses across operations, commerce and sales, employee management relationships, et cetera. So it can be everything from being their digital agency of record, which like we are for Kia, for example, we run kia.com and manage that website for them. And we work closely with their in-house teams on continuing to improve customer engagement on that website. It could be a commerce relationship where we're helping our clients succeed in direct-to-consumer sales or through digital platforms like Amazon or Walmart.com or Target.com, et cetera. And we also do a lot of digital software development. So we're building digital platforms, digital products, mobile apps, things like that for our clients. So kind of all things in the intersection of digital transformation. And our clients are primarily Fortune 500 companies. Like I mentioned, Kia, we work for United Health Group. We work for the U.S. Air Force, Qualcomm, Epson, the list goes on. But we also work with some smaller and mid-sized companies as well. And then within CourtAvenue, it's a fairly new company. We started it in 2020 and can talk about that more if interested here in a bit. But we also want to be a platform to help incubate other services companies that sort of have a boutique niche. So we did that a few years ago with a company called Modify. That's a performance marketing business. And they work almost exclusively with direct-to-consumer brands and businesses. We're about to announce a second one that we're doing in the IoT space. Connected device space, connected experiences. So we'll be talking about that one here soon. We're growing internationally as well. So beginning of this year, we opened up our LATAM business also.
And yeah, I really like the Taylor guitar connection as well.
Yeah, they're an iconic brand. And you can imagine, again, back to that quote, "Software's eating the world," right? So COVID accelerated a lot of these digital trends that were already happening, but certainly accelerated them. And one of them was a direct-to-consumer sort of experience. So if you're a iconic brand like Taylor, historically, all of your retail sales happened through third parties. You sold through Guitar Center or, a music store, mom and pop store. Yeah. Exactly. And they still do. It's still a significant percentage of their business is still going to come through that venue or that platform. But more and more people are buying musical instruments on the internet. And Taylor Guitars has a great brand. They have, many, many years of experience and great data sets to help customers make informed decisions. And so they needed to sell direct to consumers to provide that vehicle or mechanism for people to engage with their business and to buy guitars online. And so they worked with us to help launch Taylor Guitars, their direct to consumer site. Still a work in progress. It's a great company to work with.
Yeah.
And so them, like many, are working on what's that blended omni-channel model between still using third-party retailers, but making sure we have a CRM strategy, a loyalty strategy, a customer, direct-to-consumer marketing and commerce strategy as well. And that was one that they came to CourtAvenue on, and we've been working with them now for 2.5 years.
I was going to say the reason it seemed similar to me when the internet sales started coming on in my industry. People were saying no one would ever buy a pair of cowboy boots online. You got to try them on. You got to see how they fit. They got to know how they feel. And I think guitar was kind of the same way, right? It's like, you got to play it. You got to see how it feels. But I think what happens is you're not going to get necessarily a new buyer of cowboy boots to buy them online, but you're going to get the guy that's sort of got a pair, 2 pair, 3 pair, and he knows exactly what he wants. he's had a pair of them before, so he knows how they feel. Maybe, I don't know if that's the same with the guitars, where maybe this guy upgrading or getting a second guitar or getting a Rode guitar, and he already knows he wants a Taylor guitar, and he'll be willing to buy it online.
That's certainly true. I mean, I definitely think a customer that's already familiar with your brand, if you're talking about boots, they know your brand, they know their size. You walk into your local retail business, they may not have your size, or they may not have, every model or variation that they offer. From your website, you can more, get a broader catalog as well as sizing options, I'm sure.
By a lot, yeah.
But I do think consumers more and more, especially if they trust the brand and there's a good return, relationship, like, hey, if I get this in and it's not right, what's my recourse in terms of returning the product? Ironically, it was actually my second company was custom fit golf equipment that I started in 97. And the idea obviously there, and even today, is to be fitted for golf equipment, you need to walk into a PGA shop. You need a professional to watch you swing the club.
Yeah.
And by the way, today's technology for doing this is spectacular. So if I was getting fitted for clubs today, I would probably go to a brick and mortar experience if it was available to me, and do that. But a big percentage of what goes into custom fitting golf equipment, especially for 90% of the golfers, are just physical characteristics.
Yeah.
Size of your grip, wrist to floor measurements, height, things like that, right? And so we, in 97, built a website called customgolf.com, which custom fit consumers for golf equipment on the internet. Wow. And same kind of feedback, right? Like, and this was very early in e-commerce.
Quarter century ago.
Like, people aren't going to buy custom fit golf equipment on the internet. But the reality was, because the margins were very high in custom fit equipment, we could afford to ship the clubs, and if they weren't a good fit, they could be returned to us. And we had less than 8% returns. And when we did get returns, we would sell them used online and still, be able to be fine.
Yeah.
But we had a very small percentage of returns. It was a really exciting process to get fitted over the internet. We were selling golf clubs internationally to a lot of people who didn't have a local pro shop where you could get custom fitted. Right. The price point was great for consumers, and we had a trustworthy return policy. So people were confident that if they bought them and it didn't work, they could return them, no questions asked. And so people were buying their golf equipment from us on the internet. And I think that sort of mindset of, I trust Taylor Guitars. It's a great brand. Yeah. I know the instrument's great. And what I don't think is happening is that I'm walking into my local music shop and trying it and then going to Taylor Guitars and buying it direct, because the price is honestly the same.
Right.
And so if I was going to, pick it up and I enjoyed it, I'm just going to bring it home with me. But the reality is, like, there are less and less music stores in your local area. People, to your point, are familiar with the brand, and it's a pretty low risk, I think, value prop to go online and buy direct from the brand itself. And you're seeing more and more companies do that.
Our boots are the exact same. When I look up the addresses, because everyone's like, where's that? Or where's, somewhere, blah, 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 Maine. And you look it up and you're like, that person's 50 miles from a store, much less a Western retail store. So they're buying online one way or the other, just like Taylor, like you said, where there might not be a Guitar Center within 100 miles. So.
Well, since this is a travel podcast, a lot of people listening spend a lot of time on planes. And if you look out the window, you recognize really quick that there's a lot of space.
There's a lot of land
big cities. And so there's a lot of people living in spaces where it's not real easy to just walk into your local store and get what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. How many miles a year do you put on the road, do you think?
That's a great question. And I honestly have never tracked miles, and my travel has slowed down since COVID. And
sure.
When I was building Rockfish, and we can talk about that business here in a little bit, I do remember, I was regularly flying 125 to 150 flights a year. So a lot of flights. Now, part of that was because at the time I was living in an area that had a regional airport. And so many round trip flights was 4 flights. So what I'm referring to is like total. So a single destination could be 4 flights. And I was primarily flying with a single airline, so it was easier to track back in the day. And I remember one year with them, I did over 120 flights, but I'd also knew that I jumped around a little bit with some other airlines. So it was, kind of between 140 and 150. And I did that for a few years. But, business pre-COVID was a lot more in person with clients. I mean, clients were concentrated on going into their office. So it was very easy to say, my client's in this city, I'm going to go see them, and you can see all your stakeholders. Now, even our clients, in many cases, have been distributed because of COVID. And so, they're not asking you to come on site as much. They're more comfortable doing, business pitches and getting to know each other through Zoom, et cetera. But it has been picking up, and there is a somewhat of a return, I think, to an office culture, especially for some Fortune 500 companies. So my travel has slowed down compared to what it used to be with Rockfish, but it has picked up compared to what it was even a year ago, and certainly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I would say, like I'm normally, 1 or 2 trips a month kind of pace right now. Some months more, some month less, but it feels a little more balanced today than it was feeling, 5 years ago.
You're based in Austin. I mean, that's a major hub. You're center of the world there. So
totally.
That's a good place.
Austin's easy because you can go to both coasts very efficiently from here. Right. And so, and international is getting better. They're adding international flights more regular. You can fly direct to London and some other spots. And from there, you can jump almost anywhere. So that makes it easier. But yeah, Austin's a pretty good airport.
I don't like landing there. I don't know why.
Why is that?
I think the wind came the wrong way, or we landed the opposite way one time. And like we came in over the city and buildings, and I'm looking at everything. I'm like, I don't know. I'm a window seat guy, so I was like,
yeah.
It was just a connector. I'm like, oh my god, like I don't know, it just freaked me out. Portland's like that for me.
Okay. Yeah.
The one time I flew into Portland, I came in and could you come over the Columbia River? And we had such a wind coming out of the north, we were coming in sideways, crabbing. And so like I'm literally looking at the runway. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, we're landing sideways in last second. So
I feel like for me, those landing experiences have been in Denver.
Yeah.
I think like the way that winds come down off the mountains or something, I've normally had the kind of the trickiest, like, windiest landing experiences for some reason in Denver, but I haven't noticed it in Austin. And I've landed here many, many times. So I don't know, maybe you just had a random experience. Yeah, a special experience. Yeah. Were you flying Spirit Airlines? Maybe that was
it. No. I didn't want to. I'm pretty sure I've never flown on Spirit or Frontier.
I haven't.
Yeah,
I did Allegiant a couple times, and it wasn't bad, honestly. I mean, it's a little different playbook, but I didn't have too bad of an experience. It just
I thought like some of the small the turboprops I've flown to get into like Bozeman and Billings and some of the smaller towns. Idaho to Twin Falls. There's only 2 flights a day.
Yeah,
one comes in the morning and takes off, and then another one lands. I showed up too early, and there was no one at the airport.
Nobody.
Yeah. I'm like, like nothing was open. There was no one in the airport.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of those are some of those are even seasonal airports too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tahoe and some of the other ones would be like that. And Bishop.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, and I've talked to several people that founded companies in 2020. I mean, that was the start of COVID for anyone that doesn't remember. How was that? Were you midsummer, or when did you start that?
No, we started January 2020, so we had no idea. Yeah, we had no idea. So, okay. So yeah, that's a great question. I think sometime, someone will write a book about companies that founded like during the beginning of COVID. I do think it was honestly an advantage to starting right at the beginning of COVID versus being, a ship in the ocean already and having to kind of adjust quickly. And so we were obviously by March of 2020, we were 4 people. And so it was just in the infancy stages of getting started. And we had a point of view. My co-founder and I had both founded agencies doing similar things to what I described, when I gave the overview of CourtAvenue. And so this wasn't our first time building a business like this. And our network was pretty diverse and distributed. So we had this sort of point of view and vision that we would be a distributed company with a lot of remote workers right out of the gate. And so, I definitely think what we ended up doing, we were such a new company and we were just starting to tell our story when COVID started. And we did because we had no overhead other than, Dan and I weren't on salary at the time. We had 2 employees we were paying, and we did have a project that we were working on, but it wasn't a stressful project where we had, hundreds of people. We had to figure out how to sort of work together in a new way again. So it was lucky for us in that we were able to kind of just sit on our hands for a little bit and say, all right, like it's really hard to start like a new business with a new identity in the middle of this situation where people have a lot of other priorities. And so for a few months, we just sort of sat still And so technically, it feels like we actually really leaned into starting CourtAvenue the second half of 2020, even though we officially announced it in January.
Right.
And then for us, COVID, provided, I think, tailwinds to what we do because, as we described earlier, digital acceleration really became a priority. And I think almost every CEO of every Fortune 500 company was being asked on investor relation calls and by board members, what's your digital transformation strategy? A lot of vulnerabilities in the digital ecosystem were exposed because of COVID.
Yeah.
So companies needed to quickly play catch up. And even though we were small, we were kind of mighty in terms of team and experience. And so we came out of 2020 and into 2021 with a lot of momentum, and we've continued with that momentum. So the company's grown very rapidly since, but 2020 was definitely an interesting year. And we didn't start, CourtAvenue after COVID. We started it just before, so it made it pretty easy to navigate through it. But we're learning lessons like every company is in terms of hybrid work environment and all the both, I think, benefits as well as challenges of working as a largely distributed team across a big geography and with clients who are also more distributed than ever. So, but I think net it's been positive, Pete. So we've looked at it as something that's really not been a problem for us, to be honest.
I was going to say, it seemed like when I was kind of doing the research on the company and you and all that, it almost made sense. Like, I don't mean to be insensitive. It seemed like COVID would have benefited you because it allowed you to hire people that could work remote. It became more of an accepted norm to work remotely. Your clients all of a sudden were like, they're now, everything's going digital. Everything's, people are looking online. I mean, my online sales, all the stores in California closed up. So, and I had a store that opened up in January 2020, and he closed down in March of 2020. So that was
it's a sensitive topic, Peter. You're right, because it was a little bit of a feast or famine sort of experience for companies, right? And so I have a gentleman who I met that was had a testing facility, right, where they did medical testing, and they were a pretty small business with under 10 million in revenue. And they got the licenses in a couple states to do COVID testing and shot up to 150 million in revenue. And he's like, look, he goes, I knew it wasn't going to last forever. And now their business is, still a very significant business because they were able to invest those dollars into significantly expanding what they're capable of doing. So for them, he goes, I felt bad talking about it. Like, he goes, my business was booming like I could have never predicted because of something I had no control over. And we were just in the right place at the right time. Yeah. I think what we do as a service and capability definitely benefited from COVID. I think our types of, our company structure is organized around being efficient in a hybrid work environment. And so for us, I would look at it as probably tailwinds, but I know a lot of other companies really struggled. And so, it's a sensitive topic to discuss because it depends on what industry you're in and what service you provided, but some did very well as a result of COVID and others struggled.
Yeah. I mean, it was my online stores boomed. I mean, it went to Christmas time in April and May of 2020. It was like Christmas season.
Totally.
For my online stores.
Yeah.
And I was able to.
Has that online business maintained have you noticed the growth still being strong? I mean, post COVID, I know they boomed during COVID because it was the only option, but did you collect a lot of new customers and a lot of you still seeing? I think it changed a lot of, changed a lot of buying habits for people who became, my parents who were in their 70s. They were not Amazon, or Walmart.com shoppers prior to COVID, but during COVID, they adjusted and they realized, hey, this is actually pretty slick. and they still probably push their carts around the store more than most, but they certainly have learned new buying behaviors that COVID accelerated.
It's going to be an interesting time, right? Because a lot of my retail stores that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years, I was store owners, 50, 54 years they've been in business. Life's changing. Their sales are phenomenal, but they complain about online sales, and I'm like, well, do you shop online? Well, yeah, but I'm like, well, yeah, but
yeah, we have a point of view. Back to what CourtAvenue does. The name CourtAvenue is from the first paved road in America was in Belafonte, Ohio, and it was CourtAvenue. And while we say, well, paving roads didn't shorten the physical distance between 2 points, it shortened the practical distance. And that's what innovation, software and technology innovation at its best does, right? So if you were to look at major disruptors in their industry, think companies like Amazon, companies like Uber, companies like Airbnb, Netflix, and you sort of step back and say, like, why did these companies grow so fast? And what, and how did they, get such a large market cap in such a short period of time? And if you really just break it down into sort of like it's value to the consumer, it comes into three categories: speed, convenience, and trust/transparency. And that's, if you look, and we could break each of those companies down and talk about how they do that, but ultimately that's what technology at its best does, right? Is it shortens the distance between 2 points, your relationship with your consumer, your relationship with your team members, et cetera. And that's what technology sort of applied at its best does. So that's how we define digital innovation at CourtAvenue: is, are we shortening the distance between 2 points? Are we adding speed, convenience, and trust, transparency to your relationship with your customers? And if you do those things, then that moves the needle for your business. And if you don't do those things and someone comes into your category and does do them, then they're going to take market
over.
Share. Yeah.
I would say it seems like I always put things in for sales in two categories: transactional sales and relationship sales. And I would say CourtAvenue is more in the relationship sales, because you hope it's a long-term relationship and you're going to grow together. And like you can't, transactional sales is a car sales. You're going to sell a car today, and it got, or furniture sales, or, diamond jewelry sales. It's very transactional, very got to make it today. Whereas I think CourtAvenue is really trying to build relationships with the clients.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it is both, right? I mean, I think ultimately, even in a transaction scale, like an automobile, like having a good relationship with your customer leads to other types of value propositions along the way, services and support, and certainly keeps you top of mind when that next transaction. So many people lease their car today, right? So it's a 2 to 3 year, 4-year relationship, and then they're back in the market again. And so we certainly, I think the way you grow a business is pretty simple, right? One is you attract new customers, and second is you keep the ones you have. And a lot of businesses focus on one or the other. And I think if you can do both well, that's the way you continue to take market share. And so we definitely think about the transaction. We think about that point of purchase, but at the same time, we're really focused on loyalty and customer retention and customer growth and engagement as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's kind of all encompassing then.
Yes.
Yeah. With you don't travel as much, and I'm not either. Like I told you before we started going back to Denver for the first time since pre-COVID. Like we finally opened up. We've been doing our sales meetings via Zoom, but we know there's it's just different not being in person. So we're going to start traveling more. How have you kind of balanced? I mean, you have children, you have a family. How do you balance running all these businesses and having that, and then still balancing home life?
So Peter, my personal situation, I kind of have lived life a little bit in reverse, because I was married at 20, had my first kid at 21, my second at 25. So my girls are now in their 20s and out of college even. And so I don't have the children at home challenge that I had in my life of building Rockfish and other companies. And so in my 20s and 30s, it was a completely different conversation than what it is today in terms of that question. I also I think about, like, I've never liked the term balance when it comes to this topic, because balance sort of assumes you have these 2 or 3 competing things that sort of need this proportionate amount of attention and time given to them. And if not, one of them's out of balance. I like the word rhythm instead, which is, kind of more of an emotional feeling, an instinct or an intuition about when something is sort of out of whack. And so I think there are seasons and times in business when you've got to put in those 80-hour weeks, and when you've got to be on the road for 3 consecutive weeks at a time, and you're going to miss out on a few things. And then I think there's those moments in life where you're not traveling as much, and you're there probably more than your kids wish you were home, and you're trying to meddle too much. And so I've always looked at my life in terms of rhythm, around health and wellness, family time and commitment, and professional life. And try to just, intuitively ask myself the question, does something feel out of rhythm right now? And if so, how do I adjust that and fix that in the future? In today's world, for me, my kids left the house when I was in my second one left when I was in my early 40s, and I just turned 50. And so I'm in a situation where my wife and I are able to travel, as we need to or want to, other than having to figure out what to do with our little wiener dog Winston.
Yeah.
And sometimes he goes with us, depending. But for the most part, we can kind of do things now and travel without that sort of challenge of, am I missing a kid's event or game or something
Yeah.
going on at school, or am I just not spending enough time and giving them enough attention? So I'm a little past that phase, but you know, it's and I will freely admit that being in business and being an entrepreneur at this stage in life is much easier than it was in my 20s and 30s when I had those other important responsibilities as well.
I'm with you. My daughters are 28, 29, and
Yeah.
I just became a grandpa, so I'm in
Wow,
I'm in that next level.
that's exciting.
Very, and yeah, but I had my older daughter's engagement party this weekend, so
I'm ready for that now. I'm not rushing the girls or giving them any pressure. In fact, neither are married yet. So, but when I turned 50, I think psychologically the milestone of saying, okay, I could be a grandfather now, felt okay. Because technically my youngest daughter is, only 20 years younger than me. So she's 29. She'll be 30 this year. So, if she would have married young like I did, we could have had a 5-8-year-old grandkid right now. That would have felt weird in my early 40s, but I can handle it.
I have some friends that's happened to.
Yeah.
She got pregnant.
It happens. Yeah.
Yeah. She got pregnant at 18, and then her daughter got pregnant at 18 or 19. So like at 39, she was a grandma.
Yeah. That was close to my parents' situation because my dad probably was 39 because I'm trying to do the math in my head, but he's 19. He's only 19 years, I think, older than me.
Same boat, yeah.
And so, and I had a kid just after I turned 21. So he would have either been 39 or 40 when my youngest was born.
Yeah. And now that you're 50,
crazy.
You can go, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't believe, I was mature enough to have, I wasn't actually, but it happened. But
I was going to say, on the same boat. Like, what?
Yeah. Had him young.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you said, I'm with you now because now our biggest issue is who's going to watch Louie, our dog. Like,
exactly.
That is literally our biggest issue.
Ours too. We were just having that question this morning because we're going to Mexico City third week in August we have an office there, so we're doing work, but we're staying for the weekend too. So Molly's coming with me, and we're going to kind of make it a work/fun trip for the weekend. And from Austin, it's so easy to get there. And I love Mexico City, by the way. I just think it's a great international city, and there's just great food, great people. So love going there. And but we were having that discussion, because my oldest daughter lives in Austin, and she'll come stay at our house and watch Winston when that works out. But she's actually out of town that week as well. So, we've got friends. Winston's a good dude. People love him, but we're always like, okay, who's keeping Winston this trip? But other than that small responsibility, it's pretty easy for us to get up and go.
Is it a priority now to keep your rhythm with your wife to make her come on as many trips as possible?
She loves to travel as well. And, I would say, I'm trying to think of it, probably 50% of the work trips she'll come on me with, just because I'll go to San Diego and we'll stay the weekend or, so we kind of tag along and do that. And she can work and do what she does from anywhere. And so, and then we're kind of in a phase right now because there's a lot going on professionally with CourtAvenue. We're also building a home in Bentonville, Arkansas. That requires a lot of time and attention and a few other things that's going on. So rather than doing the long 2-week vacation, we've been doing the 4 nights. So, and we kind of like those. So, we'll jump. Cabo's a great spot for us because it's easy to get to. For her birthday in a few weeks, we're going to Quebec City for 4 nights. We've never been. I've heard it's a great city without the jet lag and without having to cross the ocean. So we'll do these kind of leave on a Thursday, come back on a Monday or Tuesday, or leave on a Friday, come back on a Tuesday kind of trips, and try to do 1 a quarter. And normally someplace that, because they're short, that's pretty accessible. That's what we've been doing this last year. So we'll go to Napa or we'll go to Cabo or this Quebec City trip or something like that. And so that's kind of the way we do personal travel. And then with work, she'll be able to come along on trips where I'm going somewhere kind of nice. So for example, I mentioned San Diego. Yeah. It's just a better weather this time of year. So if I have to go out there for work and she can come along, that's an easy trip. So we'll do those types of work, sort of combine work and stay for the weekend trips when we can as well.
My wife's always available when I have to go to see my Hawaii accounts.
I imagine so.
I don't even tell her when I'm going. She says she's available. It's pretty magical.
Yeah, my wife's made it really clear that she grew up in Austin, but she moved to Austin. Oh, she moved to New York City post went to school at UT and then moved to New York and lived there for 10 years and came back 5 years ago. And so anytime I go to New York, that's her non-negotiable.
There.
Going back. She's like,
Yeah.
you're not going to New York without me. So, but it's fun. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, but
She's got friends.
when I go, hey, I got to go to North Dakota. She's like, I'm busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Hawaii, I'm open. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, Hawaii, there's always a reason. Hawaii is amazing.
Hawaii was beat up during COVID. I lost 3 stores. But they were all tourist based.
They shut down tight, didn't they? They got pretty strict over there.
Well, on the Big Island, my largest account was at Parker Ranch, and every morning, literally every morning, they had a Japanese tourist bus come by an hour before the store opened up, and 40, 50, 60 people Japanese tourists would get off the bus, travel throughout the store, armfuls of product, and get back on the bus. They would do their day's sales before they even opened.
Yeah.
Japan tightened up. Hawaii tightened up. They didn't.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That's an example of one of those unfortunate businesses where the entire model just sort of crashed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's, but there's going to be an opening somewhere, right? Because it's going to come back.
There's that demand still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's where online retailers and businesses that ship direct were well positioned for that particular moment. Or those businesses that did survive it, some of the competition went away. And so they've got a bigger share of the market now.
Yeah. And freight to Hawaii is terrible too. We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
I
can imagine. Yeah.
And cowboy hats aren't great. They're light, but they take a lot of box space.
Yes. Yeah. Tough to ship.
Yeah. Yeah. And damageable. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Is there a future for you to have a private jet?
I would hope so. Yeah.
Because you mentioned Bentonville, Arkansas, which is the home of Walmart. Yeah. And one of my other business owners that I talked to got a private jet for a company because they were going into Bentonville and some other smaller airports, and it was just a lot more convenient. They got more done by being able to.
Yeah. I've been fortunate, and I know you probably have too, professionally, to take advantage of some friends' private jets here and there. I've never owned one, but I've been spoiled by it a few times over the years. I connected. Have you heard of JSX Airlines?
Yeah.
They're like a boutique. They're kind of semi-charter, but they're, you buy a ticket online just like you would the American, but they you go to a private FBO and no real security, minimal security. And so I've been connected to Northwest Arkansas region since I moved there in 2001 and love the region, and it's really prospering, and my family lives there and got a lot of friends there. And I'm building a house there because I'll spend more time there when it's finished. I'll keep my home in Austin as well, but it's a region where I've got a lot of friends and family, and there's a great entrepreneurial ecosystem there. And as I'm kind of in that phase of life now where you think about being useful as much as successful, it kind of feels like a region and an economy where I'd like to contribute however I can. Plus, it's just a great quality of life. There's 4 wonderful seasons there. There's a great outdoor lifestyle, a great art environment. There's 3 Fortune 500 companies there and the ecosystem that supports them. So not to oversell it, but I think it's a really special, place to live.
Yeah.
And so it'll be, 18, 24 months before the house is done. But yeah, the private jet conversation, on the JSX, they're flying more out of Austin. There's a lot of locations out of Dallas. So I got connected to the CEO of the company through the network and got on a call with him and introduced him to some people in Northwest Arkansas, hopeful that they can do it direct from Austin to Bentonville on JSX. So we'll see, doing what I can. But yeah, I think as you start valuing time more than money and you're able to do that, I think the idea of having, I don't know if I'll buy a jet or if I'll charter, or I've definitely had this conversation with a lot of people. And I think the playbook, if you own, is to do it with, 3 or 4 other people, because the goal is you got to keep the thing flying to make the average cost per hour go down. And so if the right circumstance presents itself, maybe you own, but I think it's probably more feasible to charter. So maybe in the future, it definitely is something that I think about as I get a little older. I think it's a
I
great way
interviewed
to
Matt Leota. He owns Fly Lovato, and they bought
okay.
the Honda jets. I don't know if
Love
you've
the
seen them.
Honda
They're
Jets.
smaller jets. They only
Yeah,
hold, I think,
love them.
six to eight people.
Mhm.
And he was part of Net Jets, and then he started
Yeah,
Fly Lovato, and so he sells out ownerships of it. I think it's 12 or
yeah.
16. You
I'm
know,
taking a note here. I'm gonna look them up.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's so many good business models now to give you
Mhm.
access to that with lower cost and overhead and responsibility. Like um, so I just think that market's really a lot of innovation happening in alternative forms of transportation because the airports are are busy. Although it's interesting, they're doing things even within the security checks and stuff to seem like to
Yeah.
make them more efficient. They're upgrading equipment and stuff. So like even in the non TSA check lines, things are moving a lot more efficiently, et cetera. But I've got like I think most of us who travel a lot. One of the sort of jokes with my wife it's my second wife. I went through a divorce about 10 years ago and met Molly about 5 years ago. And when I met her, I was after we had on a few dates, and I was like, okay, a non-negotiable is you have to have global entry, you have to have TSA
It's a
pre-check,
yeah.
and you have to only travel with a carry-on. Right? These are like non-negotiables. The
Yeah.
relationship won't work if this doesn't work. and and so you do everything you can. I have Clear as well, and
Yeah.
you do everything you can to try to eliminate any kind of like unpredictability in the trip, and hopefully get through security pretty efficiently, et cetera. But yeah, there's nothing like private or some of these semi-private aviation options in terms of just
Yeah.
speed, convenience, and and that's something that I use value more and more.
It was obviously pretty cool. I remember I'm TSA pre, and I went into Denver, and the
Mhm.
TSA pre line was longer than the standard line because they had 14
Yeah,
people working the standard lines and one person working the TSA pre. So
sometimes that happens. The
kind of
same thing is
backfired
with
on me.
Clear.
Yeah.
Clear when I first, I was an early adopter. It was predictably you could show up at the airport and get right through security. But now everyone that's sort of caught on and they offer it like free through American Express. And
Yeah.
so more and more people have it. And Clear can be slow if there's too many people, right? Because they do that, it's actually kind of a process to scan your eyes and then have the person bring you to the front. So yeah, that's a little bit more, when I was in the Austin airport, I noticed that they've got new security checks where like people who are non-TSA now don't have to take their shoes off, don't have to
Yeah.
take their equipment out of their backpack. So as those lines move faster, more efficient, it just so look, I think again, technology is improving the security check even at public airports. But if you have to travel at the wrong time on the wrong day of the week, you better get there early because
It
you
is
just
what
never
it is.
know.
Yeah. My wife,
It
I
is what it
dropped
is.
my wife off to go to Detroit, and it was back. Or no, they were going to Nashville and just another day for whatever reason. It was like an hour and a half to get through security. They weren't TSA pre and all that, so they got stuck in the regular line. I'm like,
You just
man,
you kind of learn in Austin which days like I get unless I just can't help it. I know like certain days of the week or like following a UT game when not to go to the
yeah, sure,
airport and
sure,
don't do the first thing first flights in the morning on a Friday or whatever, right? So that again, this is where Peter flexibility of now kids being out of the house is we intentionally as much as possible schedule our vacations when it's not tourist season
yep,
per se,
that's
right?
good.
So
Yeah,
we love to go to Grand Cayman, and you by the way, you learn sort of windows of time. So if you have the flexibility, if you travel after Thanksgiving and before Christmas, that 3 weeks is brilliant
wide open.
because everyone's done their Thanksgiving trip or they have their Christmas trips, and everyone's in their last week or two of school, so they're not taking their kids out of school for a trip. Same thing in May after spring break trips.
Yeah,
If you can do like
before summer.
late April and into May
That's what I
before
do. That's
summer
what I do in
break,
Hawaii then.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's because parents have done their vacations with their kids, and their kids have got those last few weeks of school when they're in finals, and so you're not going to pull them out of school at the very end, and so there's those windows of time when you can
yeah.
take trips and you really get a better experience. And so those are the little tricks that you learn, Peter. I know you have them as well. And what days of the week, what times of the day to pick flights, et cetera, if you want to avoid some of the chaos.
Well, even like national parks. I mean, uh,
Absolutely.
we're doing September, October. Because
Hmm.
kids will be back
Exactly.
in school. It's not going to be cold. It won't be. So we'll hit we're going to
Same.
hit some national parks this September and October now.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the last long trip that I took, and this was about 6 years ago. I did a month in Italy. Well, actually, Europe. I did Portugal, Spain, and Italy, but I did it like very end of September through October, and it was great because the weather was still shorts and t-shirt
Yeah.
weather, but the tourism was way down. So again, I get it that you can't always pick your timeline based on other responsibilities, but that time of my life, I was able to do it then, and it worked great. So when you can do it, that's the way to travel.
There's that two things I wanted to talk to you about. I know I'm taking up a lot of your time. What you have your rhythms, and I really I saw an interview where you're kind of getting into meditation, sleeping, eating, which I wish I would have done in my 20s, but I'm kind of in the same boat now. That's what I'm studying, is how to make longevity come. What's kind of your schedule to keep your rhythm going?
Yeah, this has become a super important topic to me, and I'm happy. I'm grateful that like the basics I've been doing for a while. The general basics of eating pretty well, of working out on a fairly regular cadence. I've been doing since my early 30s. I wish I had started in my 20s, honestly, but it was really in my early 30s when I got started. But the real optimization, and some of this has been driven by data, right? So I've got the Aura Ring, I've used the Whoop Band and some of these fitness trackers, which really help you dial in those kind of things that are impacting things like sleep, right? Like we never really thought about, I mean, literally as an entrepreneur, that statement that I'll sleep when I'm dead, like I thought that, I just never prioritized sleep. I wouldn't say I've never been like a heavy drinker, but like drinking, having drinks was a regular part of going, like having a glass of wine with dinner or opening a bottle of water, of wine at night, or having a cocktail, and especially in business, there's a lot of just social hours and never even thinking twice about like what that was doing into my energy and sleep and things like that. Right. And so I think part of it's getting a little older, that stuff impacts you a little bit more, but my regular routine and kind of what I try to dial in is, prioritizing just fitness and personal growth, which I do first thing in the morning. So my normal agenda is to wake up around 6:30 in the morning. Something that I've always prioritized and will always prioritize is having a home gym. I just think it eliminates a massive excuse in terms of, getting to the gym is a pain. And this is one of the things when I have rented a home, for 2 months, for example, like I started the year off at 2 months in San Diego area. And you didn't have a home gym. I rented a place, but I had to go to a gym, and I made it work because it's a priority. But it's not near as convenient as getting out of bed, having your morning supplements or whatever you start your day with, and then hitting the gym. And so I'll wake up in the morning and I'll do that. And then I've gotten into cold plunging and infrared sauna, both of which I have at the house. And I have kind of like on my cardio days, I cold plunge. On my lifting days and weights days, I do the sauna. And then do some breathing exercises. I've never really gotten great at the long form meditation. It just hasn't really moved the needle for me. And I just find that I'm, not patient maybe enough for it. But I do think some shorter term kind of breathing exercises are important. And then I just cut back on certain things like alcohol. I still love a glass of tequila or a good glass of wine, but I try to, as much as possible, just prioritize that for like a Friday or Saturday night where, I don't need as much energy the next day because it's a Saturday or Sunday or whatever. And I track my sleep and try to dial that in and optimize. And I work with some physicians. I do a lot of tests and stuff to check biomarkers and such, et cetera. Just kind of make sure things are tracking good. But that kind of even goes back to the private aviation question, Rod. I think as you get older, you start thinking about the value of time, and you want to optimize your life. You want to I don't have grandkids yet, but when I have them, I want to be healthy and And so I love, the podcast, the innovations in podcasts and just the bringing new content, right? Like, so I love Dr. Peter Attia's podcast. I love Dr. Huberman's podcast, and there's many others, but there's so much great content around wellness now and longevity. And, there's some people thinking we can live forever if we can just live another 20 years. I don't know if I buy into that. But I do like this idea.
I was just reading a book last night about living to 115 to 120.
Look, it might be possible. I wouldn't count against it, right? I mean, I think artificial intelligence and machine learning is really going to radically change healthcare and personalize wellness. And I think it's going to really increase, drug discoveries. And then there's just other stuff that's happening in that space. And Dr. David Sinclair talks a lot about this, and he's, an expert in this topic. Look, I don't know. I hope that happens. I would love to make it to 120. But if I make it to 120, I want to make it healthy. I don't want to limp to 120, right? I don't want to limp from 80 to 120 and just be kept alive. I want to live well and have a healthy lifestyle. And frankly, as a business person, it does improve your performance professionally, right? So when I'm eating well, when I'm exercising regularly, when I'm not drinking, 7 nights of the week, and when I'm making good personal decisions, I definitely wake up with more energy. I feel more focused when I do the work that I do. And I think it makes me a better entrepreneur and a better, business executive by making those choices.
And I hope there are some younger business people listening to this show just to get to know, because like I said, I wish in my 20s and 30s, I was like you. I was like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's like, I got to work. It's like, I'm working. You sleep 5 hours, 6 hours. And the kids were smaller. I was eating on the road, eating out of a gas station because I didn't want to stop for a real meal, so it's just like sodas and all the garbage food. And like, what was I thinking?
I did the same, and I do think they're, my daughter is 29. My oldest daughter was over for dinner last night, and we were literally having this conversation because she's dating a guy right now who's really serious about wellness, and he's 30. And we were just having this chat about, like, even then growing up, like, because I was in my 20s when she was born, like, we over time started recognizing, like, the importance of food choices and different decisions like that. But today, there's a lot of young people because they listen to the same podcast, right? Like, the information and the access they have to information is one thing. Like, when I was in my 20s, if you wanted to learn this, you read a book.
Yeah.
And things like blogs and some online content started to happen, but there wasn't a great business model around someone like, Dr. Attia or Dr. Huberman putting this content out there like there is today. So now, you have this incredible, content, platforms where world experts are going online. And I mean, it's just an amazing time that we live in terms of our ability to educate ourselves. And so I think that 20-somethings today have access to this content. They recognize that it's important, and they're making much better choices than we did in our 20s, just from pure, education and awareness.
Default,
by default. Yeah.
I mean, even if they get a clip of Huberman, who have you seen his podcast with Tony Hawk and Jason Ellis?
I don't think I've seen that one, actually.
You should. Is
it pretty good? I'll check it out. I listen to a lot of it. His are long. His are normally 3 hours long.
He was on Tony Hawk and Jason Ellis's thing. It's Hawk.
Oh, he was on their podcast.
Hawk and Wolf.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Huberman was a skateboarder growing up.
Yeah.
And actually knew and stayed at Tony Hawk's family's house when they were kids.
Yeah.
So
I've heard him tell his story a little bit about being kind of a skater as a kid, but I didn't hear his interview with them. But he's brilliant, and his ability to take, like, really complex sort of health and
and neuroscience
topics and break them down and make them very practical, I think is just incredible. So I feel very fortunate, that we have access to so much great content.
Yeah. What is your work schedule? Because it seems like your work schedule as regimented as your. How did you start that off?
Yeah, I think most days you kind of start leaning into email around 8:30 or so a.m. in the morning. So I'm getting up around 6:30, and normally kind of the morning routine is over by 8:30. I'll check email or text and stuff while I'm working out. And I know that's kind of a faux pas, but I'll do it if something comes through. But for the most part, kind of 8:30 to 9 a.m. The central time is where I'm in, right? I'm in Austin. So that's when my day kind of kicks off. But we have East Coast team members in offices as well as West Coast. So the day kind of just goes until some days it's over by 5 p.m. Sometimes I'll have a call at 6 or 7 just because the West Coast office or team, but it varies whether if I'm traveling or what, but I would say the core kind of 9 to 5, 9 to 6 kind of business hours are where I'm most busy. And with some exceptions here and there, just based on a specific call with a client, but overwhelmingly it's kind of those core business hours, kind of the 9 to 5 or 6 hours that most people are familiar. Yeah.
Because I as entrepreneurs, like for me, I have my day job. I have my podcast. My brain's always working.
Oh, well, your brain, you never turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always like, and there'll be obviously nights when after dinner, I've got to respond to an important email or return an important phone call, or prepare for something that's due, that I have a delivery on the next day. So I think your mind is always engaged. But if you enjoy what you do, I think the balance between work and play should be such that people don't even recognize the difference. And I think being an entrepreneur it's kind of like a hobby to me, honestly. And it's harder than a hobby, I suppose. It's not as fun as getting to play golf on the weekends if you get to do that or whatever, but because it is hard. But I've been doing it for long enough that I find the game of entrepreneurship really interesting and exciting. And so for me, the balance between work and play, they overlap. My hobby kind of has been, my professional life in many ways. And I don't look at that as a negative. I look at that as a positive. I've always been fortunate to enjoy what I do. And so because of that, it doesn't necessarily feel like work. It doesn't mean it's easy. In fact, many times it's very hard and there's some very stressful moments. But I've learned to kind of appreciate it. I enjoy the people who I work with. I feel very fortunate that I get to work alongside some of the smartest people I've ever known through CourtAvenue. We get to work with, a lot of great companies with big challenges. So for me, it's kind of motivating and stimulating. But, I do, just like we talked about, I have a morning routine and I try to focus on it. I try to eat earlier dinners as well, kind of part of that. Like I like to finish eating by 5:30, 6 o'clock, just so, because I go to bed early. I go to bed 9:30, 10 o'clock most nights. And so I like to be done eating by 5:30 or 6. And because I'm done early enough, and again, that's the routine, but not the rule. Yeah. If I'm meeting friends on a Friday or Saturday or even a work night, it'll be different. So I'm not hard headed about it, but when I can and when I'm home, that's the routine. And so, but if I finish dinner by 5:36, it's no big deal to jump on the laptop for another hour or whatever needs to be done. It's fine. And I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. The last thing, you seem to be similar to me in the sense you book in extra time on trips for maybe the wife or to go see, to make something enjoyable out of it instead of it's just a work trip. Because I used to be flying it on Thursday night, work all day Friday, either fly home Friday night or Saturday morning. And then I'd get home. People would be like, hey, did you go see Mount Rushmore? I'm like, no, I was there for work, but you seem to, now I do. And you seem to do that too. Is that part of your regimen?
It is. Yeah. And I like being able to do that. One, it's fun to travel with your spouse. I think that's an enjoyable part of life together. And she loves to travel and I do also. And so I love being able to do that. And, if you have to get on an airplane and go somewhere, again, to your point, it kind of depends on where I'm going and if it makes sense. But if I'm going to San Diego, the weather's better. We also have friends out there now, and I'm like, let's come along and stay the weekend and come back Sunday afternoon. That way, we can have some fun in San Diego, wherever the place might be. Yeah. We do that, like I said, with New York and Mexico City and other great spots. And so when I can combine work and fun, that's kind of what we just talked about, right? Which is, I look at ways to integrate the two. And so when that works out, we definitely maximize and take advantage of that and do something very similar to what you just described.
Yeah, because to me, that's the travel win. That's I get the win out of
100%.
Not just focused on a win in work, but the whole trip. So
exactly.
Well, I appreciate the time. What's the best way for my listeners to follow what you have coming up and then CourtAvenue?
Yeah, so CourtAvenue, probably the easiest thing. I mean, we on LinkedIn, if you go to our site and just follow us on LinkedIn, we post updates there. Also, our website, is courtavenue.com. I'm not very active on Twitter, but I'm on Instagram at Kenny Tomlin. That's my handle on most social platforms, just my name, Kenny Tomlin. But we do have an Instagram for CourtAvenue as well. You can follow us there. But we're probably most active on LinkedIn as CourtAvenue or on our website.
I love LinkedIn. I've sent a lot of people over to LinkedIn.
LinkedIn's really matured as a social platform, and I think it's great for business executives and leaders. I think it's becoming. I probably find myself more engaged on LinkedIn. To me, Instagram is like, oh, I'm just killing some time and seeing what And but LinkedIn is where I probably get the most value in terms of just scrolling their feed and seeing links to great content that I find helpful or educational. So I think it's a pretty cool platform.
I've told a lot of my daughter's friends that they need to get on it now. They're like, well,
I agree.
I started my job, or I just graduated college. Like, get on now, start making some connections. You'll never know where they end up. So
totally agree. Totally agree.
Well, thanks again for the time. I really appreciate it. And if I get into Austin, I'll have to hit you up sometime, or
Please.
Probably won't get into Bentonville, so I got about 2 years to maybe track you down.
You never know. All roads lead to Bentonville for some reason. You never know. But
So true.
they really do. They really do. I think next to New York City,
Very
Bentonville
true.
might be the most visited city in America for Fortune 500 CEOs.
Yeah,
Everyone's doing business with Walmart.
A lot of business people. I've met some people here, and they go there to do seminars and speaking engagements, and I'm like,
It is the most unique ecosystem. Rockfish, was a business that was, by most measures very successful, and I don't think it would have happened at that level and at that pace anywhere other than Bentonville, Arkansas. There was just, it was a good business at a good time, but also was a great ecosystem there. And today it's even better. So I think everyone keep their eye on Northwest Arkansas and Bentonville. That area kind of feels like the next Austin. I moved to Austin in 2012, and some of the similarities of what you felt there, you feel in Bentonville. And so I think it's going to continue to emerge as a really important ecosystem.
They just need a little bigger airport and you'll be there.
It's growing, but it could be better. No doubt. They're working on it, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Tanny. I really appreciate the time.
You bet. It was my pleasure.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.